I was kicked out of the house as a teenager for spreading false rumors about my brother, who is years older than me. My parents saw how successful I was and demanded money after they abandoned me. I am a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. When we were growing up, my twin brother and I experienced very different treatment from our parents. My parents seemed genuinely convinced that my brother was destined for greatness, while I was the so-called black sheep just because I was more interested in playing sports or making new friends than studying. They compared us, which was really demoralizing and bruised my self-esteem from a young age. When I was a kid, I had to watch my brother have these huge parties with his friends on our birthdays while I was treated like an afterthought. He often had sleepovers with his friends, and I was never even allowed to bring my friends back to our place. To be honest, I loathed every minute of my childhood. The only person in the family who seemed to care about me was my grandmother when she visited. She always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few dollars so that I could treat myself later. As the years passed, this blatant favoritism for my twin brother gradually transformed into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents openly mocked my grades and belittled my hobbies. It felt as though no matter how much I tried, I could never meet their expectations of being the perfect child. They also barred me from participating in extracurricular activities. They wanted me to focus only on my studies, just like my brother. It was frustrating, and I felt helpless as a child. Later in my sophomore year, I got grounded again. This time, I had done nothing wrong except download the Snapchat app to stay connected with my friends. However, according to my parents, this was a huge crime and a breach of their trust because they had forbidden me from communicating with my friends. They went crazy. They were crazy and threw all my stuff around the room. Then they took the doors off their hinges and told me that I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents abuse me like this was really tough. My twin brother, instead of supporting me, made my life worse. The toxic environment created by our parents' unjust actions allowed him to exploit the situation to his advantage. He adopted a pattern of lying about me and falsely accusing me of things I never did so that he could get away with things. If he stole something, he'd just shift the blame to me and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me. They readily accepted his lies. He'd demean me in front of my friends at school and make fun of my appearance. Despite this, I had a wide circle of friends at school because I was approachable and open to making connections. My twin, however, struggled socially. He started to resent that I could talk to people while he felt awkward as an introvert. This jealousy reached a boiling point during our 14th birthday party when no one showed up for him on his birthday. I have no idea why his friends did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends took me out for ice cream, and I had an overall wonderful day. This infuriated my brother further, and he took revenge. He began to spread false rumors at school about me, portraying me as a spoiled brat. He would falsely tell everyone that he was allegedly physically abusing him at home since our parents loved him more. I didn't know this, but he took things to a disturbing level to fabricate evidence. He would punch himself purposefully, inflicting injuries like a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would confidently walk into school displaying the self-inflicted injury. He would tell stories about makeup whenever our parents questioned him about the injuries. He would lie, saying that it was due to innocent activities like playing football. As time went on, the lies about the black eyes started to gain traction with his friends. They began to believe his distorted version of events. It wasn't long before whispers started circulating. Even my friends began to look at me with suspicion. At first, I noticed subtle changes. Friends who once chatted with me in the hallways suddenly became distant. Invitations to group hangouts became fewer and farther between. It was like a switch had been flipped. People were hesitant to associate with the supposedly spoiled girl. One day, I mustered the courage to ask my ex-best friend why things had changed between us. She opened up about how my twin brother had been spreading rumors about me. She revealed the detailed lies he had told everyone, accusing me of things I had never done. I was shocked to hear her words. I felt a mix of disbelief and betrayal. It was as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, someone I grew up with, was spreading lies about me. It was a betrayal that cut deep. I was shocked and sad. I confronted my brother the day after school, but he ignored me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he just smirked and told me that I deserved to rot alone. His lies and behavior were starting to scare me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was afraid that they would believe my brother over me. The isolation stung, especially because I had always been open to making friends. It felt like my brother's jealousy was tearing down the connections I had built over the years. Teachers too began to catch wind of the rumors. It was a surreal experience, as if I were living in a parallel reality where my true self was overshadowed by the malicious story spun by my own twin. The lies had grown beyond mere teenage gossip. The rumor was now shaping how people truly perceived me. The nasty rumor quickly reached my principal's ears, and then my worst nightmare came true. The principal immediately called me and my brother into his room, as well as our parents, so we could discuss these alleged rumors. I sat there, heart pounding, as the principal demanded the truth. I hoped my brother would finally come clean, but instead he doubled down on the lies. He straight up told the principal that the rumors were true and painted me as this bully who went around beating him up when our parents weren't around. Couldn't believe it. I was shocked as my brother continued spinning this story about how I was angry at him for getting more love from our parents. It was all a bunch of lies, but he stuck to his story like glue. My mom began to cry hearing my brother's story, holding on to my brother like he was some kind of hero. My dad tried to comfort my brother, telling him that he was brave for speaking up and for saying that nothing would ever happen to him after that day. I tried to defend myself, pleading with the principal that it was all made up. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to swim to the surface, but my brother kept at it, insisting that I was this angry, violent person, taking out my frustrations on him every day. My mom's tears kept coming as she held my brother, kept giving me these accusing looks. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's made-up story. My principal was pretty firm with me, saying the school didn't tolerate bullying and these were grounds to suspend me. I tried to plead with him not to suspend me, but he just shook his head and said he couldn't just let it slide. I was really trying to tell him that I didn't do anything to my brother, but he wouldn't listen. He told me I'd be suspended for 10 days to set an example to others and make sure they never bully anyone. I was really upset and started crying even more. I practically begged him to reconsider, but my parents were angry and embarrassed by the whole situation. They took me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to plead my case and make them understand, but they were having none of it. We left the school, feeling really frustrated and humiliated. When we got home, things took a drastic turn. My dad started packing my stuff out of the blue. I was shocked, confused, and had no idea what was happening. My mom asked him what he was doing, but he just shouted that he couldn't let me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying and pleaded with my brother to tell them the truth, but he stayed cold and unmoved by my emotions. My dad continued packing my things and then threw the suitcase. I clung to my dad's legs in the foyer, still begging him not to throw me out. It was like a nightmare unfolding. He told me that I was like a bully and that I didn't deserve to live in his house. He said that he would ask my grandmother, my dad's mother, to come and pick me up if she wanted to do that. It felt like the world had crumbled beneath me. I stood there in shock, surrounded by my belongings scattered in the foyer. I was kicked out of my own home. My grandmother eventually showed up. She gathered all my things and helped me put them in the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I had my seat belt on before walking towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my dad opened the door, she started to yell at him for treating me this way. She was very stern and determined. She warned him that if he ever approached me or tried to contact me again, she wouldn't hesitate to involve the police or the CPS. My mom tried to blame me for what he did, but my grandmother wouldn't accept that. She stood up for me and said I was just a kid who didn't deserve to be treated that way. That was the first time I saw how powerful my grandmother was. She didn't back down from my parents. She was different from what they thought. She trusted me. Eventually, we left, leaving behind my home, the only place I had ever grown up in. I can't even begin to describe how much pain I felt during that time. I remember just crying on the bed and not eating anything, despite how much my grandmother urged me to. I told her what my brother had done, and she was shocked too. She assured me that she believed my side of the story, and I was happy that I at least had that. When the 10 days of suspension were over, I felt like I was stepping back into a lion's den as I entered the familiar hallways. My classmates' faces spoke volumes. Judgment, whispers, and sidelong glances. The weight of the false accusations continued to linger in the air. Meanwhile, my brother blatantly ignored me and acted like I didn't exist. He had become friends with a few people who believed his side of the story. He saw me as the one who'd attacked him, no matter how much I tried to tell my side of the story. No one would listen. I was an outcast, branded with an unjust label that clung to me like a shadow. I was treated with disdain and mistrust wherever I went. I became a loner. I kept my head down and attended all my classes, had lunch alone in the cafeteria, and I just wanted to go straight back home. I had no friends, and it felt like everyone pretty much didn't want me there throughout all this. My parents never once called to check up on me. My grandmother would constantly remind me that this was not my fault and that life would eventually be okay. I graduated high school with good grades and was looking forward to college, where hopefully I would have a better life. It was only when I went away to college that I first experienced what it felt like to be truly free. No one was watching over my shoulder, no one was comparing my grades, and no one was trying to compete with me. I met people and formed friendships with like-minded individuals, despite the emotional and physical scars I had sustained over the years due to my family and peers. I concentrated on putting it all behind me and enjoying this college experience as much as I could. During this time, I discovered my knack for content writing. I had always been someone who wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would ever happen. I was able to focus on my studies without worrying about being compared to others or having to compete. I met people and made friends with people who were on my wavelength, despite the emotional and physical scars I had sustained over the years due to my family and peers. I decided to put it all behind me and enjoy this college experience as much as I could. I discovered my knack for content writing. I had always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would be sustainable. I wasn't sure if it would be sustainable for the long term, so I decided to ditch my dream. But I needed some extra cash, so I started writing as a freelancer. I signed up on various freelancing sites and got some jobs from big clients. This is how I slowly started building a portfolio of my work throughout college. I kept this side hustle going and never asked my parents for money when I graduated. Instead of getting a corporate job, I realized I could pursue content writing as a full-time job. My day job was going well because I had a lot of clients and they trusted me to work on their projects. Having a legit freelancing career not only made me financially independent but also allowed me to travel the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even though it was definitely not easy. I saved up as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I have seen so much. I've seen so much of the world, and I've still got so much of it left to see. The only person I considered my family throughout all this was my grandmother. I adored her. She was sad when I moved out, but she understood that I needed to be independent. Despite my hectic schedule, I would make it a point to be there for her whenever I could. I would visit her on the weekends, often sharing meals together or simply sitting on the porch engrossed in conversation that ranged from childhood tales to more recent happenings on weekends. I would dedicate entire afternoons to helping her with household chores or accompanying her to the local park for a leisurely walk. Recently, I finished one of the most important projects of my career. I can't mention the brand, but I was lucky to write blogs and product descriptions for them. After the project was done, I asked the team I worked with to leave me positive reviews on my websites, which they were happy to do. I also took screenshots of some of their reviews to post on my Instagram. As you might imagine, working with this brand was a huge deal. As a result, a lot of other content writers reached out to congratulate me on my professional success. Some even reposted my story to help spread the word. That's how I started getting messages from strangers who also needed help with their website. My relatives noticed this as well. Some of them reached out to congratulate me. Eventually, I was contacted. My college principal reached out to me after seeing how well I was doing. He wanted me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about building a career as a content writer. I was nervous because I don't do well when it comes to public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and agreed. When I found myself standing before eager faces sharing my experiences and insights, I felt like my life had come full circle. In my speech, I spoke about I shared the challenges I'd faced and how I'd worked hard to keep going through all the tough days. It was really rewarding to empower others and contribute to the growth of the writers' community. Some of my clips started going viral on Facebook groups as people shared them. It felt good to be finally recognized for my hard work. Last week, I was invited to speak at a local news channel. It was a show about the benefits of content writing, and they invited me to share my journey. I shared some insights with their viewers. I was a bit nervous but also excited for the opportunity. During the show, I talked about my experiences, the importance of client reviews, and how a simple appreciation post could open doors to incredible opportunities. The opportunity to reach a broader audience and inspire more individuals in the field was both humbling and exhilarating. When it finally aired, I shared some of these clips on my Instagram. I was proud about being invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and my cousins started finding out how well I was doing in my career. My parents never talked about me to anyone, so they had no idea that I was working with popular brands and getting invited to TV shows. This is how word spread within my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears because just a few days later I was working on another project and had my phone on silent when I was done with my work. I checked my phone and was surprised to see that I had missed calls from my mom. I saw there were 6 missed calls from my mom. I was surprised to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she'd called. I called her back, and she picked up right away. I asked her if everything was okay, and she congratulated me. My dad probably was sitting right there with her, and he started to ask about. I answered their questions without much thought. It didn't strike me as unusual until they began to ask how much I was earning these days. I told them that it was none of their business, but my dad replied that we were family, so I shouldn't feel shy telling them my income. I told him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mom then began to say how hard their life was these days. I was suspicious. That's basically how our conversation went. Mom, we're retired now and have been wanting to renovate the house for a while. It's not in the best shape, but we have no savings left. Okay, Mom, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we're a family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We can really use your help. Are you joking? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't even talked to me for years? I don't know what made you decide to reach out to me. While I appreciate the congratulations, I am not going to help you out in any way. Hearing this, my mom started saying how I was being unreasonable and that I needed to support them as a family. My dad also added that as my parents, they deserve to be looked out after. I was so tired of this that I wanted to give them a piece of my mind. I suddenly had an idea that instead of just arguing with them, I should teach them a lesson. I thought that they could mooch off me after mistreating me all those years ago. I told my parents that I was willing to help them if and only if they agreed to my demands. My dad asked me what it was without hesitation. I laid out I said that if they wanted my help, they had to publicly admit that my brother was behind the hurtful rumors that had tarnished my reputation. I wanted them to humiliate my brother the same way they had humiliated me in front of everyone by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to take accountability for their actions and acknowledge the pain they had caused me. My dad began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mom told me my dad said this was all unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without involving others, but I stood my ground. This condition was a non-negotiable requirement for any future assistance they wanted from me. As the tension increased, my dad raised his voice, emphasizing his role as my father and stating that it was my duty to help my family in need. My mom, in a last-ditch effort, urged me to do the right thing and help them, emphasizing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden appeal. I reminded them of the past and that they had kicked me out, not my grandmother. They got more and more agitated, but I told them firmly that if they wanted to establish contact with me and seek my financial assistance, the truth needed to be acknowledged publicly and my brother needed to face consequences for his actions. Since this conversation, my parents have been they've been calling me nonstop, but I'm ignoring their calls. I'm starting to regret even calling them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd really be in a hole if I didn't help my parents at all. It's been a whirlwind of a week since I last shared my story. The support and encouragement I've been receiving from everyone has been overwhelming. It's heartening to know that I'm not alone during this time. I'm glad that everyone agrees. I shouldn't engage with my parents or even consider helping them out after what they did to me. I gave them such a condition because I knew it was pretty much impossible for them to do it. They love my brother too much, and despite finding out that it was all lies, I don't think they'll ever put him through what they put me through today. My brother sent me a nasty text after my parents tried to contact me again. I didn't pick up their calls. This is what he wrote. "Hey sis, it's been a while since I've seen you. I can tell you that every day without you in my life has been great. I heard that mom and dad reached out to you and you gave them a crazy ultimatum. They are never going to go through with it, right? They never loved you and they'll never do anything to hurt me. I admit that I did lie about you. It's been 15 years, but it's been a long time since then, so try to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless anyway, so why not help them out by paying for repairs and renovations around the house? Do the right thing and be a better daughter." Seeing the message felt like a stab to my chest. The audacity to dismiss the struggles I'd faced and the conditions I'd set spoke volumes about his lack of empathy. He tried to make me feel guilty by pointing out that I'm unmarried and childless. It was really insensitive of him to imply that I should put their needs before my own well-being. I was really offended by that, and it made me realize how little he thought of me. I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and reveal the truth that had been hidden for too long. I sat down to write an email to my parents and close relatives. I also shared the painful details of my childhood and the unfair treatment I had endured while growing up in my family house. I described the strict and oppressive environment I had under my parents' roof and how they treated me compared to my twin brother. I also wrote about the malicious and completely untrue rumor my brother had spread about me in school, which had led to severe consequences and affected my reputation. I wrote how my parents had kicked me out and that I might not have made it if it hadn't been for my grandmother. I might have been dead in the streets by now. Towards the end, I asked everyone to read a message my brother had sent me. I attached a screenshot where he admitted to lying about me. It was a clear confession that I hoped would expose the lies that had persisted for too long. It's been a month since I last updated you. A lot has happened since then. As you can imagine, my family reacted strongly when they received the email. My parents have received criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of the favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members reached out to me, telling me that they had no idea about all this and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and my parents sent me a barrage of text messages they got more abusive and violent, so I decided to reach out to a lawyer. I sent them a cease and desist notice, basically warning them not to contact me further or they'd have to face legal consequences. I guess it scared them because they stopped contacting me. My grandmother thinks I did the right thing by letting everyone know what happened and supports me 100%. She's the only person who matters to me, so I'm glad she's my grandmother. Back update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update. I'm happy to report that everything in my life is going well for now. Professionally, my content writing business is doing well. I'm getting a lot of invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts, which is helping me build a reputation as a respected figure in my line of work. I'm as close to my grandmother as ever. I took a break from my work recently so I could spend some quality time with her. She's into gardening. These days, she's been teaching me a lot about different flowers and herbs in her garden. The moments I've spent with her, whether sharing meals, engaging in heartfelt conversations, or simply enjoying each other's company, are my favorite and most cherished memories. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm happy that they're staying away from me personally. I've started going to therapy, so hopefully I can work on healing myself. I think this will be the last update for now.